Hello, everybody. This is the assignment from April 20th through the 24th. I want to thank a lot of you guys for turning in your World War II projects with the websites. Overall, you guys did a pretty nice job on them. Overall, so again, thanks a lot to those that put the hard work in and completed that in a timely manner. So again, make sure you guys are staying on top of your guys' schoolwork. I've been trying to dial down a little bit on the school stuff. Trying to give you 2 or 3 things to do a week. It should, rule of thumb, most of these things should take you between an hour to 2 hours per week to do all of my stuff with the lectures and exit tickets and assignments. So most of you guys are doing a really nice job with that. So I guess to recap so far, we've spent the past 2 weeks digging into Cold War. What the Cold War is. So hopefully at this point you've kind of garnered that Cold War is, after World War II, you have 2 superpowers that start to emerge. Sorry, my kids have those toys out and they're playing. But you have the United States and you have the Soviet Union. 2 huge powers, communism versus democracy. That became at the forefront. Two very different views. And then really since then you had both sides trying to do the best to try and outdo one another. And last week we talked about the Marshall Plan, think of Marshall money, Truman Doctrine, like our pledge to help other countries. We have the Korean War, which was our example of containment. So NATO, Warsaw was formed, 2 alliances. So now we're going to get into this week. We're going to get into kind of stuff that was going on here in the United States. Something called the Red Scare. Now, next year in U.S. history, we'll spend more time on it. So just for now, we'll just focus on, just the basics, I guess. So the Red Scare in the United States. So some of the video notes you guys need to kind of jot down for this week. So just like in the 1920s, so there are a few Red Scares in the United States. One happened after World War I. But in this case, we're talking about another Red Scare that happened after World War II in the 1950s and 60s. Basically what that means, it's a fear of communism. Fear of communism coming to America. So what you have to understand, just give you guys the Cliff Noted version. The 1900s, there were literally tens of millions of immigrants coming in the United States from all over the world, but specifically Europe. Well, what was in Europe? Communism. Soviet Union, the Iron Curtain, all those countries in the Iron Curtain. So we were very fearful that a lot of these immigrants were bringing over with them communistic beliefs and trying to change and alter our ways of life and lifestyles. So that's what the Red Scare means. Red Scare is a period of heightened anti-communism, paranoia that will sweep across the United States all throughout the 50s. The people will literally be fearful of their neighbors, family members, teachers, Hollywood directors, judges, police officers as being communist. So you really have to be careful with what you say. Guys, hey! I'm doing a video. Alright, sorry guys. So paranoia will be justified because you might see it, especially in the assignments that you guys have covered so far. The paranoia was justified to an extent. There were things that were occurring. You had China turn communist in 1949, so hence it's spreading. We fought in Korea. So North Korea is now communist. China entered the war against us, and they fought against us in the Korean War. You have, as we'll get to in our next unit, you have the Soviet Union. They get the A-bomb. Then we develop the H-bomb. They get the H-bomb. Then we start developing nuclear missiles. So we get it, they get it. And then you also have something else that's big, is the idea of spying. Spies became huge during the 40s and 50s. We were spying on the Soviets, and they were spying on us. And I'll show you some examples of that here in a little bit. So that leads me into the CIA. So what does the CIA stand for? The Central Intelligence Agency. This was created in 1947. Again, after World War II, at the start of the Cold War. This agency is obviously still around today, but they're responsible for gathering information, especially on the Soviet Union, all across the world. Their headquarters is in Langley, Virginia. So lots of cool spying missions will occur over this time, espionage, them trying to spy on us and we're trying to spy on them. So some really cool stories about that. And we were catching some spies in the United States. So that's why the Cold War, that's why the Red Scare was really heightened as more spies were caught. So in response to that, the United States is going to create this organization, this committee called the HUAC, the House of Un-American Activities Committee. This was set up actually in the 30s, but became more prominent during the 40s and 50s. Congress set up this group to investigate communist groups in the United States to see kind of what they're up to, what they're doing. Are they trying to create anarchy? Are they trying to create more strikes? What kind of trouble are they getting involved in? So long story short, the HUAC is going to investigate Hollywood. This group called the Hollywood 10. This Hollywood 10 was a bunch of film directors and actors. So when they went to go investigate them and have them answer questions, the Hollywood 10 refused to answer questions. So when they refused to answer questions, they were thrown in jail. They were prosecuted as being suspicious by not answering questions. Like they had something to hide, basically, as being loyal to the Soviet Union. So also there were labor leaders and there were government officials that were also investigated as well. But the Hollywood 10 will become prominent. As you guys will read in your guys' readings, they'll become. Well, let's go on to this one, I guess. They'll get blacklisted. Blacklisted means that their reputations are going to be ruined. Essentially, that they're going to be deemed as a communist or as at least a communist a sympathizer, and they're going to be seen as not being trustworthy or disloyal towards America. So, meaning blacklisted means that they won't be able to get another job again in their industry. Their reputations will be tarnished. So that's what the Hollywood 10 is. Another spy. You have Soviet spies were all over America, sending Soviets top secret information. The one in particular that we'll focus on, at least for this slide, is Alger Hiss. Alger Hiss, he worked in the State Department in the U.S. government. Somebody who he knows, last name is Whitaker, Chambers Whitaker, is going to accuse Alger Hiss of being a spy. And that Whitaker knows that Alger Hiss is going to deny it. So what he does is he offers up, okay, well, here's evidence. So he leads investigators off to this pumpkin patch in Maryland. And there was a bunch of hollowed out pumpkins and had these little film strips in it. And he claimed that they were Alger Hisses. So they found these papers in a pumpkin patch, so they called them the pumpkin patch papers. He lied to the HUAC, and he will be thrown in jail for, I think it was 7 or 8 years for that. One of the things you guys read about in you guys' readings was Ethel and Julius Rosenberg. They were a married couple. They provided the Soviets with atomic secrets during World War II, and this couple will be executed for their role in sending the Soviets secrets of our atom bomb and our Manhattan Project. So this showed that the Soviets had spies higher up in the Manhattan Project. So that was obviously key. So they were executed for their role. So again, this goes to show that Soviets were able to infiltrate, high levels of our government and key projects like the Manhattan Project, building the A-bomb. We believe that the Soviets were going to build an A-bomb eventually. We didn't think it was going to be so quick. Don't forget, we used 2 A-bombs in World War II in 1945. We thought maybe mid-50s, would be the time that the Soviets would finally get it. They got it in 1949, 4 years later. So that's why they were able to get it so fast, was because of spies like the Rosenbergs giving them this kind of information. Now, this one you still hear about today, something called Joseph McCarthy, also known as McCarthyism. Also, it's pretty much associated with it being a witch hunt. Essentially, Donald Trump, during one of his campaigns towards the media, he claimed it as basically being very Joseph McCarthyism-like. Not using a whole lot of facts and fake news, and it's a witch hunt to try and bring him down. So he's used that same phrase before. But so Joseph McCarthy, he was a U.S. senator from Wisconsin. He led this witch hunt as a campaign technique. Again, he has to run for office. So in the 1950s, he knew that communism was a hot topic issue. If you can accuse communists or people in your country being disloyal and you can catch them, that will help boost your rank and your persona and your popularity. So he starts wildly accusing a ton of people of being communists, that were in government, that were in all different realms of our country. Now he claimed to have a list, but he never showed the list. He just kept campaigning and talking tough talk, and accusing people and really ruining their reputations. So long story short, after this goes on for a couple years, and even towards like the end, even the first couple years, even members of his own political party, President Truman, President Eisenhower, they despise him, because they basically see him as a bully, essentially, that he's able to get away with blindly accusing people of all these things and not showcasing evidence to support it. So finally, long story short, in 1954, his party starts to come to an end, where you have the army trials. He accused members of the army of being being communist. Now, you guys all know and well aware, in our country, our soldiers are thought of very highly. And when you start bringing the fight to the military and trying to tarnish the loyal, brave men of and women of our country, you better have some evidence. So he barked up the wrong tree. He picked the wrong fight in this case. So for the first time, these debates or this trial will be on TV, and the public really sees this as a bullying technique, and they really starts this at this point, 4 or 5 years into this witch hunt, people really begin to question and begin turning on McCarthy. So in 1954, in December, the Senate voted to censor him for his conduct and strip him of his privileges as being a senator. McCarthy will die 3 years later of alcoholism. He goes into deep depression after this, because he's basically isolated. Nobody wants nothing to do with him, and his reputation is basically tarnished. So the term McCarthyism lives on to describe anti-communist, reckless accusations. Basically, you're guilty by association. It's not deemed as being a very positive term. If you ever hear that, being McCarthy, it means that you're blindly accusing without evidence, trying to bring people down. So all these things were things that were happening all throughout the 50s. A big deal where neighbors were turning on each other, family members were turning on each other. You had to be very careful with what you said. If you said something that was a communist thought, that could lead to some consequences for you as well. So this was a real fear. So this will lead us into our next week's lesson on the nuclear arms race. So just kind of give you guys a heads up on this. Next week we'll be talking about the nuclear arms race, stockpiling of weapons that will lead us into the Cuban Missile Crisis of the 60s. All right, so let me know if you guys have any questions. That is it for the lecture for the day. You guys have tasks this week that you need to do, which will be an exit ticket and a worksheet, and obviously this lecture. So that's basically it. All right, adios. Have a good one. See you guys next week.